Greetings from Elite English Academy. Dear friends, in this video I am going to discuss the topic cultural studies. So this topic is very vital for English literature students because this forms the 7th unit of Net English syllabus. In addition to that, in PGTRB English, Unit 8 has got the topic Approaches to Literature, under which one topic is Literary Criticism and Theory. So under this, cultural studies also finds an important place. So the names like Raymond Williams, Stewart Hall are repeatedly asked in exams. So for this, it is very important to become familiar with cultural studies from exam point of view. What culture has meant before. So the word culture is derived from cultura and color, which means cultivate. So it also meant to honor and protect. So culture means honor and protect. By the 19th century in Europe, culture means the habits, customs, and taste of the elite. So this is the most important part you have to understand. So culture once referred to the habits and customs of the upper society. So the elites, the habits and the other beliefs of the lower people are completely ignored. If we understand culture in this way, what is the meaning of culture in cultural studies? Culture is the method of generating meanings and ideas. This mode is negotiation over which meanings are valid. So here what we have to understand, the beliefs and meanings are not general. So it is just created and protected. So here culture meanings are governed by power relations. Those who are in power, they define the definition of culture. Especially elite culture controls meanings because it controls the terms of the debate itself. So what should be culture? What should be the meaning of the culture? Everything is decided by the people who are at the creamy layer. Especially the others, non-elite views on life and art are completely rejected as tasteless and useless, and even they are considered as stupid by the elite. So these are not recorded properly in those times because there is no representation from them at all. This fact implies that certain components of culture get more visibility and significance, whereas the others, especially the non-elite people's culture, is completely ignored. So from this, so culture is defined from the elite people's point of view. So Raymond Williams is the most important person from whom we have to say the cultural studies originated. His two works are very important in this regard. One is Culture and Society, which was published as a separate book in 1958, and The Long Revolution in 1961. So here cultural studies sought to analyze culture by way of a concept of totality. So culture means it is about totality, complete, that had been refined by new ways of conceiving the relationship between base and superstructure. The idea of base and superstructure is derived from Marxism. So there is a society, there is the base, so there is the people who are in the production mode, so the people who generate everything, and the elite superstructure that controls the base. So this cultural studies is focusing more on the relationship between the base and superstructure. So invariably we understand the fact there is a close relationship between Marxist principle and cultural studies. So Raymond Williams, for his cultural studies ideas, follows Antonio Grassme. So here he addressed the unique forms of cultural and ideological hegemony. Hegemony means domination that characterize advanced capitalist societies. So here, so whatever may be the structure of a society, in a particular society, a group of elites, so they play the dominant role, that is hegemony. That hegemony controls the rest of the group. Cultural studies focuses on studying that hegemony and other controlled relationships. According to Raymond Williams, culture can be defined in three different ways. One is the ideal, second one the documentary, third one the social. So first, the ideal. It is in which culture is a state or process of human perfection in terms of certain absolute or universal values. I hope you understand. So here, cultural value, or it is a culture, is a state of process of human perfection. So culture is evolving always. It is inching towards perfection in terms of absolute or universal values. So culture has got its own universal value. So this is the ideal definition of culture. Second, he categorizes it in the documentary. So it is a documentary in which culture is the body of intellectual and imaginative work in which, in a detailed way, human thought and experience are variously recorded. See, so documentary in the sense how the culture of a particular society is recorded, it is by the intellectuals through their imaginative work. So they have recorded. So as a result, when the later generation comes, so we read and understand the culture of the past. The third one, so the social based definition, so in which culture is a description of a particular way of life which expresses certain meanings and values not only in art and learning but also in institutions and ordinary behavior. The social perspective of culture refers to how a group of people behave in a particular way, how their behavior is being controlled by different social institutions. So from this we understand, according to Raymond Williams, there can be three different dimensions of culture. One is based on the ideal, second the documentary, third the social. Further, Raymond Williams defines the theory of culture as the study of relationship between elements in a whole way of life. Hence, the analysis of culture is the attempt to discover the nature of the organization, which is the complex of these relationships. So from this we have to unearth the meaning that when you do the cultural analysis, when you have cultural studies, there you are trying to discover the nature of organization and its complex relationships. Here, he recognizes the dynamism and complexity of late capitalist society, the web-like connections. So here, when you go for cultural studies, when you go for culture-based analysis of a work, so here you are studying the connection, interconnections, web-like connections that link subcultures and the various class formations within overlapping regional and national frameworks. So here, so culture, the dominant culture, so it has got its own subculture which was ignored completely for a long period of time. When you go for the analysis of culture studies, there you are just analyzing the dominant culture and subculture and how that contributes to the overall culture. So regarding cultural studies, there are some important names and texts. First, Michael Foucault and Pierre Bourdieu, they also consider culture as a dynamic network of relations and links. From this, we understand that culture is not stagnant. It is dynamic. It is ever changing. Number one. Number two, it is networked. It is the relationship between the different social strata of the society. So another important person related to cultural studies is Richard Hoggart. His work, The Uses of Literacy, Changing Patterns in English Mass Culture, which was produced in 1957. Then the most important name in cultural studies, Stewart Hall. His work, Policing the Crisis, Mugging, the State and Law and Order, which was published in 1978. Then Dick Hebdige, Subculture, The Meaning of Style, Ian Chambers, Migrancy, Culture and Identity. Dear students, I request you to become familiar with the names and the authors and their works, because these are all some of the important works related to culture studies. Then, so there is another beautiful context. So that is politics of culture. What is the politics involved in culture? So it can be classified into high culture or low culture, mass culture or popular culture. So here, according to cultural studies, so the powerful or the dominant makes his culture acceptable. So the people who are in the power, the people who enjoy the support of the people, masses, they make their culture being accepted. So the process of making a culture is more important than culture itself. For example, if you take present society, how the dressing pattern changes. If a particular famous actor wears a particular jeans or dress, if an actress wears a type of sari or a kind of dress, that becomes popular. So here, if an ordinary person like you and me is trying to create or introduce a fashion, will be ignored, number one, or will be laughed at. But a person who enjoys the support of the people in public tries something new, that becomes the part and parcel of the new culture. So from this we understand the politics of culture. So here the politics behind the creation and augmentation of culture is the powerful ensures that their culture is being accepted. Then what is popular culture? Popular culture is the culture of the mass. So there is many people who follow that. Cultural studies looks at mass or popular culture and everyday life. Please make a note of it. Earlier, this mass culture or popular culture was being ignored. Whereas now cultural studies is looking at the popular culture and mass culture. For example, the comic books, cinema, popular music, the open space of the city, sports, these things were not considered as culture at all because that belonged to the masses. Now there is a great shift because cultural studies is focusing on these things. For example, the new genre graphic novel. So that study is being evolved. Earlier, graphics novels were completely ignored. So they were branded as children's book. Nowadays, the serious study is going on in that. So that is the change that we can see. For a very long time, as mentioned earlier, these cultures was rejected as inferior, whereas now there is a revival. So the only true culture was the culture of the elite for a long period of time, especially in 1969. The Department of Popular Culture at Bowling Green University launched the Journal of Popular Culture. Please make a note of it. So from exam point of view, this is very, very important. The first journal for popular culture was the Journal of Popular Culture, which was launched at Bowling Green University in 1969. So after this, the popular cultures were being recorded and they were being accepted. So after this, the folk culture, subcultures, so these things were gaining importance. So from this we understand culture requires a language to represent itself. So which is called as discourses. So a culture may be good, A culture may be specific, but if it is to be represented, it needs its own language, that is, it needs its discourse. So, culture helps one understand who am I. So, we understand each other's culture. So, when it is recorded, when a particular culture is going unnoticed without any record, that is not preserved at all. So the need for recording the culture was realized. So here the unification of people with the same culture takes place because of cultural studies. So the introduction of cultural studies has given new voice to the cultures that were ignored for a long period of time. Right. So regarding cultural studies, we have to consider it as an innovative discipline because it is an it is interdisciplinary field of research and teaching that investigates the ways in which culture creates and transforms individual experiences, everyday life, social relations, and power. So, the most important phrase here I would say, so cultural studies investigates and transforms the individual's experiences. So, cultural studies looks into how meaning is manufactured, ideology coded into everyday life. So here repeatedly cultural theory is stressing one point, that is, so here, so culture is manufactured, it is created and transmitted to others. Then cultural studies believes that the culture of a community includes economic, spatial, ideological, erotic, and political. These are these different segments that are included in cultural studies. So when you take a novel and study that, if you do the cultural studies, then you'll be concentrating on economic, spatial, ideological, and their sexual and political interventions. So cultural studies seeks to understand how particular objects acquire meaning and value in a society or community. So, culture is not a natural thing, it is produced. Cultural studies is interested in production and consumption of culture. So, how a culture is produced, how it is processed, and how it is transferred to others, and how that is consumed or received by the other people. First, let's see. So, the production and consumption of culture. So, it is based on the matter of class. So, who decides? Already you know, it is the elite decides. Then elite means the people who are occupying the high position in the society. So it is matter of economy, of course. The people who afford, so they practice that. For example, a kind of new dress is introduced. If the dress was 10,000 rupees, only the people who are affordable to buy that, they use it. Right? Then it is the matter of representation. For example, if you and I write a novel, we need money to publish. So the people who write something, if they want to get represented, they need some money to get it published. So it is the matter of representation. Then even if it is the publication, if we go for an ordinary publication, our work may go completely ignored. But whereas even an ordinary work that is published through a very good publishing house will get worldwide recognition. So it is not only the recording of things, but also how it is being represented. So how it is represented, that is those who are at the high level of the society. So the production and consumption of culture is linked to power and identity. So the production and consumption of culture is linked to power and identity as mentioned. So in short, it can be called as a production, that is, it is a product that is made. Culture is a product that is made, marketed, and consumed. So these are the different levels of a culture. So culture is made, marketed with through proper medium, and consumed by the ordinary people. So then, origin of cultural studies. Of course, culture has got different phases in its own studies. Then how cultural studies or when cultural studies begin. So it is said by the students of the British New Left, Richard Hogarth and Raymond Williams. Please make a note of it. So who played an important role in the origin of cultural studies? Two important persons, Richard Hogarth and Raymond Williamson. Cultural Studies was offered as a course at Birmingham Center for Contemporary Cultural Studies. Please make a note of it. Between 1982 and 1987 in the Open University of UK, it was offered as a course. So the course code was U203. So here it was influenced by the works of Raymond Williams at the first hand. Second, Stuart Hall's work, the essay, Cultural Studies, Two Paradigms. It was published as part of Culture, Ideology and Social Process in 1981. This also tremendously influenced the course in Cultural Studies. From this, three important information to be noted. For the first time, Cultural Studies was offered as a course in UK Open University. So with a great influence of Birmingham Center for Contemporary Cultural Studies, right? So this was influenced by Raymond Williams' works. Later, Stuart Hall's work, Culture Studies, Two Paradigms, also great influence on this. So this is also an important information from exams point of view. So according to Stuart Hall, subjects were not constitutive and culturally expressive. Subjects and expressions are both determined by structures of social signification. So Stuart Hall also has the same view of like Raymond Williams, which very clearly states that culture is being controlled by the social institutions. So this structure is hegemony, so that is dominant. The ideological structure that enables the dominant class to legitimize, naturalize and retain power. So the objective of the social institution is, so they have created a structure, they have created a culture. So the culture created by the dominant class, that is legitimized, that is recognized, so that is made into normal and naturalized, and that particular created culture, and in one way or other the power retains that culture. So Hall's work, Encoding, Decoding, which was the 1973 publication, is a trendsetter in cultural studies of the media. There may be a possible question. So which work is considered as a trendsetter in the cultural studies of the media? It was Stuart Hall's Encoding, Decoding, 1973 publication. Right. The BCCS, earlier we discussed, so there is a small data about that cultural studies. There is more than 5,000 students took the course until it was terminated in 1987. So that course was tremendously influenced by the works of Raymond Williams and Stuart Hall. So this course was directed by Tony Bennett and evaluated by Terry Eagleton and Raymond Williams. So here, cultural life is not only concerned with symbolic communication, it is also the domain in which we get a collective task. So this particular study, cultural study, is devoted to understanding the process through which societies and the diverse groups within them come to terms with history, community life, and the challenges of the future. So, from this, we understand very clearly that the course in started by the UK Open University on Cultural Studies, it made an objective to study the relationship among the different societies and how the different groups they just try to get some support from history, community life and the challenges of the future. When we study cultural studies, it is important to note the early influences on cultural studies, the ideas that triggered the beginning of cultural studies. We have to understand the influence of two important writers, Matthew Arnold and Leavis. First, let's see the influence of Matthew Arnold. In 1869, in his work Culture and Anarchy, Arnold distinguishes between our ordinary and our best self on the basis of their participation in class war. So, probably, if you closely analyze the history of cultural studies, the publication of Culture and Anarchy by Matthew Arnold has some influence on the later discipline cultural studies. So, here he says, our ordinary selves do not carry us beyond the ideas and wishes of the class to which we belong. In these we are separate, impersonal, at war, but by our best self we are united, personal, at harmony. So culture tries to negotiate with the individual behavior. So one way or other, we are being influenced by the views of the society. So here, Arnold very famously described culture as the best that is thought and said in the world. So, who makes this definition on culture? So, culture is the best that is thought and said in the world. So, this is the definition of Arnold by on culture. The second is Arnold influenced the later school of writers F.R. Leavis and Q.D.Leavis. So, what is Leavism here? To define and defend culture represented by good works. So we have to criticizing worst of mass culture. Production of knowledge is always located within the vectors of time, space, and social power. So the most important difference between the critics like Matthew Arnold and F.R. Leavis and the critics like Raymond Williams and Stuart Hollis. So even Matthew Arnold and F.R. Leavis think the culture of the elite is the superior one. That is the real culture. Whereas the mass culture is being criticized by them. So if you want to showcase the real culture and good culture, it is quite natural that is you have to criticize the mass culture, that is the culture of the people, so that they can establish the elite culture. It is at this point the modern cultural critics differ with Matthew Arnold and F.R. Leavis. Here the key concepts for cultural studies are those of text, ideology and hegemony. So in the modern times, so cultural critics, they just analyze text, the ideology and hegemony, domination. Cultural studies writers offer a variety of storytelling that can act as a symbolic guide or map of meaning and significance in the cosmos. Of course, the cultural studies, they offer a perfect guide in which direction we have to analyze a work of art from cultural point of view. Here, another important work by T.S. Eliot is very important for the development of cultural studies. His work, Notes Towards the Definition of Culture, it manages much better when he defines culture not in terms of an individual or a class but more plausibly as the development of a whole society. So earlier, F.R. Lewis and Matthew Arnold, they viewed culture as an individual entity, whereas T.S. Eliot considers it as the development of the whole society. Cultural studies is non-disciplinary discipline according to T.S. Eliot. So ideology of class distinction can only be enforced through cultural practice, but it cannot be a perfect cultural studies. So the view of T.S. Eliot is different from Matthew Arnold and F.R. Lewis. Dear friends, so now we have come to the end of this lesson. So now in this video I discussed what is cultural studies, how it is derived, who are the early proponents of cultural studies like Raymond Williams, Stuart Hall, Hogarth and I gave some of the important works by them. Then cultural studies, how it focuses more on popular culture. So popular culture refers to the culture of the ordinary people, the culture practiced by many. So once it was ignored, but cultural studies focuses on popular culture. Then it focuses on how culture is produced, marketed, and transferred to others. To conclude, so the cultural studies identifies that culture is all about power relations, especially those who are in power. They make others accept their culture as the true culture and original culture, whereas cultural studies focuses on these ignored culture. Dear friends, so like this, all the lessons are discussed in detail. If you would like to join the course, please call us. Thank you. All the best.